studying Mark tonight at chapter 5. It's lesson number 4 in the study guide. And we look at 3 hard cases that Jesus has to deal with tonight. The book introduced the personality who is to be the subject of this book with testimony of John the Baptist to begin with, who identified him as the Messiah of Old Testament prophecy. And the second, the testimony of the Father from heaven at the baptism of Jesus, identifying him as the Son of God. And then in that other little bit that completes the preface to this book, the brief account of the temptation, we see him coming in conflict with the devil, not in league with him at all, but in conflict with him. So it is this person, the Messiah, the Son of God, coming to destroy the works of the devil that we have put before us in this book. And we see him making himself known to the people, not by just making an announcement and identifying himself in so many words with a claim, but showing himself in 2 ways. What 2 ways? Words and works. The words are his teaching in which he shows himself to the people, and the works refer to the miracles, as we saw in chapter 2, which confirm and show his words to be words of God, his claims to be justified. We have seen him showing himself in these ways through the first several chapters that we have studied. And now in chapter 5 we see the power of Jesus manifested in regard to 3 especially hard cases. And when I say hard cases, somebody in a class will sometimes say, well, nothing was hard for him. But it looks hard for us. These are situations that are beyond the power of humans to deal with. And by dealing easily with such cases, he manifests his almighty power and thus shows himself. He reveals who he is. He does his teaching, and the people are amazed at the authority with which he speaks. And then he performs the miracles, and they are even more amazed, and he shows himself in his mighty power through these miracles that are performed. So we want to look at the 3 hard cases, and first, the healing or the casting out of the demons out of this man, the Gerasene demoniac, chapter 5, verses 1 to 20. And they came to the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gerasenes. And when he was come out of the boat, straightway there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling in the tombs. And no man could any more bind him, no, not with a chain, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been rent asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, and no man had strength to tame him. And always, night and day, in the tombs and in the mountains, he was crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him, meaning bowed down before him, as I think it puts it in another passage. And crying out with a loud voice, he saith, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God, torment me not. For he said unto him, Come forth, thou unclean spirit, out of the man. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he saith unto him, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. And one of the accounts, this appears also in Matthew chapter 8 and in Luke chapter 8, an account of this same miracle. In one of these accounts, he besought him that he should not send him into the abyss, to be sent out of this country where he has taken up residence among the tombs, would be to be sent to the abyss place of torment. Now there was on the mountainside a great herd of swine feeding, and they besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And he gave them leave. And the unclean spirits came out and entered into the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep into the sea, in number about 2,000, and they were drowned in the sea. And they that fed them fled and told it in the city and in the country. And they came to see what it was that had come to pass. And they come to Jesus, and behold, him that was possessed with demons, sitting, clothed, and in his right mind, even him that had the legion. That's added as if it's almost impossible to believe. Even him that had the legion. And they were afraid. And they that saw it declared unto them how it befell him that was possessed with demons, and concerning the swine. And they began to beseech him to depart from their borders. And as he was entering into the boat, he that had been possessed with demons besought him that he might be with him. And he suffered him not, but saith unto him, Go to thy house unto thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and how he hath mercy on thee. And he went his way, and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men marveled. So, would you say this qualifies as a hard case? Let's add up the points. What was this fellow like before Jesus came to him?
Like a wild man.
Like a wild man.
Must have had great strength.
All right, there's a superhuman strength about him. They can't even bind him with chains, it says.
Apparently he was a detriment to society. He was cast out and took it upon himself to hide from society.
He had these unclean spirits, and there would his chosen dwelling place be sort of appropriate for a fellow like that? The tombs would be an unclean place, wouldn't it? Contact with the dead would render a place unclean. It's implied maybe here when it says after the demons are cast out, that he was sitting there clothed. It's directly stated in one of the other accounts, I believe it's Luke, that he was naked. He went about naked. I think it's Matthew who says that he was so fierce that nobody dared come by there. So can you put all this together? A fellow come running out of those hills, naked, a tomb dweller, come bursting out of there screaming like a maniac. People pretty soon learn to take another way, wouldn't they?
He self-inflicted those wounds, felt like maybe cut all up too.
And with that power that somebody mentioned, just superhuman power that he could not be confined. Fetters or foot, some kind of chain or something to confine the feet. A horse's fetlock is what? Beg your pardon? Okay, it doesn't have to do with that turf, or is it just the ankle? I was thinking the hair. Okay.
Whatever Val said about it.
All right. Anyway, having to do with the feet. Having to do with the feet, fetters, and the chains refer to other means of confining them. All right, so we haven't mentioned now the one outstanding thing that accounts for all of it. For this man's way of acting and his lifestyle.
Was it one unclean spirit but many?
All right, many. you suppose, when he comes to Jesus, why do you suppose he asked him what his name is? What is your name? Jesus said.
So that would be proven there was more than one rather than just one? Because he'd already cast out one. This would be a new accomplishment. This would be something
Okay.
after Jesus
At least whether or not that was the purpose, it at least has the effect of showing what he is up against.
It's kind of a calming effect if you're trying to establish a relationship with a stranger, to get your names established. And then that relieves the person of any anxiety about what you're up to or who you are and this kind of thing.
Okay.
What I was wondering about though, why did the unclean spirits allow him to turn to Jesus? Does that make sense? I mean, the man goes running out to him. Here he has a lot of unclean spirits, and why didn't they just take him and hide him? Why was the issue, I mean, why was it made that he was allowed to even?
The unclean spirits are the ones who are speaking. You come out to, I adjure thee, torment me not. Begs not to be sent away out of the country and into the abyss. They've really taken possession of the man's faculties, and in fact, when the answer is given, his name is Legion. Isn't that the answer of the demons? There's a spokesman, but speaking for many. My name is Legion, for we are many. Where do you come across this term Legion again? Can you think of other connections in which it appears? All right, Jesus said he could call for 12 legions of angels to deliver him. What would be a legion of angels? I'm trying to get you to direct attention to the technical use of this term.
1,000 or thousands?
A colony or a group?
Yeah, it was the term. I think it's 6,000 or thereabout, Linda. It was the main unit of the Roman army, composed of 6,000 paper strength. It'd be more or less, but that was the paper strength of the legion. It was the Roman legions by which Rome's power was manifested, and it was able to keep its hold on this great empire. So, when you think legion, you have to think great numbers and what? Mighty power. So, the effect of asking him what his name is to indicate who he has come up against here. And now we'll see how Jesus handles that. Verse 10, he besought him that he would not send them away out of the country, and the other account of it says into the abyss. And there's a herd of swine feeding here, and they asked to be sent into the swine, and he gave them leave. What do you suppose they hoped to gain by that?
Life.
Beg your pardon?
Life. Life
Okay,
is
that-
better than death.
They thought, I guess they thought that would be a means of escaping being sent into the abyss. Don't you reckon? And, I don't know much about how demons think. But anyway, that seemed to be the idea, and it was only temporary relief at best, wasn't it? The unclean spirits came, entered into the swine, the herd rushed down the steep into the sea. So when they entered into those swine, it has the same effect on those hogs that it had on this man. And they just go crazy in a rush, and they pretty soon piling up on one another right into the sea.
What do they do with all these swine? I mean, is there any place about where this is located? You know, the Jews didn't eat them.
Well,
Maybe the wrong. Oh, okay, maybe.
now,
Maybe it was-
this is territory that would border on Gentile land.
Okay.
It says the country of the Gerasenes, and this is, there's some debate about exactly where that is, but it's east of Galilee, and when this is over, then he goes back to the other side. So, on the other hand, it may be that touches on an answer to the so-called moral problem that is raised here. People are concerned about this loss, Jesus permitting the demons to go into the swine so that the swine are destroyed. One of the responses to that, and I think a likely response, is that these owners were likely Jewish. When Jesus meets Gentiles, it is pointed out. Now that is pretty consistent. I don't know of a case where he deals with Gentiles where a point is not made of that because his ministry was to Jews. But if these were Jewish owners, then what? They didn't have any business raising swine, did they? Unclean animals. And so one of the possible explanations of this then is that it is just a judgment thing against them for doing something that was unlawful for them to do. Now another possibility may be that it's just like so many things that happen in nature. It could be explained on the same basis as any number of natural disasters, storms, and things of those kinds that strike and that do great damage. And the fact of the business is we just don't know enough to tell God his business and to question him about the way what he permits. It's a curious thing that nobody's concerned that the demons were permitted to inhabit the man. They're concerned about these hogs. God had permitted the demons to take up residence in this man. And for purposes of his own, and I think the book of Job teaches us that we ought not to assume that we know as much as God, and that we're in a position to question his moral government of the universe, the things that he permits to happen. So we want to just bow before whatever he does.
Some of those feminists that were so much in favor of abortion were protesting killing those gators up here at Arden Place.
I heard an interesting question the other day, similar on the same lines, which is more valuable, a human's egg or a eagle egg?
Yeah. It is curious how confused values can get. And we get more of that as we go on. Now they come out when the word gets back to the city and in the country, it says. They come to see what had come to pass. And in verse 15, they come to Jesus, and behold him that was possessed with demons, sitting, not tearing about all over the countryside like a wild man, clothed, as opposed to his former nakedness, in his right mind, as opposed to that insanity, that rage that afflicted him. And who is it? Him that had the legion. And they were afraid. And so Jesus shows himself with mighty power in this miracle. Well, then they got the story of how it came to pass in verse 16. And verse 17 says, they began to beseech him to depart from their borders. We don't want anything like this around here. What about the sense of values of these people? Can you imagine what they're going to miss by having Jesus leave? Here, now, never mind this man who has been in such a dreadful state of existence. Never mind about that. Never mind that he's sitting here in his right mind and calm and collected and is at peace. Never mind that.
Do you think they have heard of Jesus before this?
Well, I don't know.
I think it's a case of where they're afraid of what they don't understand. And they just want to get rid of whatever it is that's causing them to be afraid.
And swine owners might have raised the house.
Yeah. I'm thinking that has something to do with it too. That this great, they see great damage and fearful thing that has happened here instead of seeing the act of mercy that had happened. And by driving him away, at least inviting him to leave, then they just robbed themselves of all the benefits that he could have been among them. And they've already seen an example of what that could have been. You
Probably
reckon?
a sermon there.
Yeah, you reckon we ever do that? What is this question, this Marshall's question that I've quoted here? Do you have any vested interest that would be disturbed if Jesus was working powerfully in and around your life? He came to a lot of people and he said, follow me, but you're going to have to do this, or you're going to have to give up that. And people turned down the great benefit that they could have had because of the cost. They didn't want to pay the price. Having Jesus in our lives can be disturbing. It can work great changes. It can be a demanding kind of a thing. It can make us give up things. But there's great blessing. And many people don't have the faith to just make the commitment to Jesus and invite him into their lives because they don't have the faith to see that everything that is going to be altogether good, that he'll do good for us and no evil at all. Well, what do you do when they say leave? He does not stay where he is not welcome. Verse 18 says, and as he was entering into the boat, he that had been possessed with demons besought him that he might be with him. He suffered him not, and saith unto him, go to thy house unto thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and how he had mercy on thee. Is that a switch? All right, what about that leper back in chapter 1? He told him, tell no man, but go show yourself to the priest and get his testimony to the people about your healing. But you don't tell anybody. What can explain the difference between these cases? Let's find out first. Let's go back to the first case and ask from the context, what was it that Jesus wanted to avoid, or apparently wanted to avoid, when he told that man, don't tell anybody? Okay, the man disobeyed. And he went and told everybody, and Jesus was pretty soon having the crowd pressing on him so much that he was hindered in the thing that he had said he meant to do. That is, go from city to city to city. He could not even go into the cities anymore because of the press of the crowds. So he's out in desert places and people were coming to him there. Is the situation different here? Is the place different?
He's leaving.
All right, he's about to leave. Now this is to the east of the Jordan and the Sea of Galilee. He is about to leave. There's just not present the same danger there, or the same drawbacks. And so he tells this man, go tell your friends the great things the Lord had done, how he had mercy on thee. And he went and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him. So Jesus will leave, but he will not leave himself without a witness. And later on, he'll come back through this territory. Chapter 7, I believe it is, where we find him coming back there. You suppose the way had been somewhat prepared when he returned? It would have been, wouldn't it, for this man?
That have been continually confronted by something that they could not deny.
Yeah.
Maybe those other things that clouded their mind might fade away some with time, but here was this man.
Such a tremendous recovery on the part of this man. And something that was just beyond the power of human beings to deal with. All right, so that's the first hard
Next
case.
question.
Okay?
By the swine dying, did they go to hell like they didn't want to?
I'm not quite sure I'm on the same
The
page.
demons,
Yes, it is.
I think so.
Okay, so
I'd always just assumed they did. They thought they were going to. Thought they could avoid it by going into the swine. I guess they did. Okay. Then two other hard cases that are interwoven into the same story here. So let's pick it up beginning at verse 21. And we'll have to move a little bit faster with this, I guess. And when Jesus had crossed over again in the boat unto the other side, a great multitude was gathered unto him, and he was by the sea. And there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he falleth at his feet, and beseecheth him much, saying, My little daughter is at the point of death. I pray thee that thou come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be made whole and live. And he went with him, and a great multitude followed him, and they thronged him. Jesus didn't have many people like this come to him, did he? Rulers of the synagogue. This would be the man. Sometimes there would be more than one ruler in a synagogue, sometimes just one, depending, I guess, on the size of the synagogue. And the man who was, or the people who were in charge of physical arrangements, and the speakers and the readers and those kind of things. Jairus came to him. It was unusual for a ruler to come to Jesus. This man is at the point of desperation, isn't he? My little daughter is at the point of death. Verse 42 says that she was 12 years old. One of the accounts, either Matthew or Luke 1, says it was his only daughter. The apple of his eye. He comes to Jesus in that desperation. My little daughter is at the point of death. I pray that thou come lay thy hands on her, that she may be made whole and live. So he goes, but they can't make very fast progress because the crowd is pressing in on him, and something else happens on the way. We pick up the remainder of this story a little later, but something happens on the way. Verse 25. And a woman who had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse, having heard the things concerning Jesus, came in the crowd behind, and touched his garment. Now one of the accounts says the hem of his garment. For she said, If I touch but his garments, I shall be made whole. So we know that this woman had known something about him before, didn't she? She had heard the reports, or perhaps had seen some of the things that were done, so she's drawn to him and has this kind of confidence about what will happen. Verse 29 says, And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her plague. And straightway Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned him about in the crowd and said, Who touched my garments? And his disciples said unto him, Thou seest the multitude thronging thee, and sayest thou, Who touched me? And he looked round about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had been done to her, came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace, and be whole of thy plague. Does this qualify as a hard case? What's the description that qualifies that?
12 years, problem.
All right.
And something evidently the physicians couldn't do anything about. She'd spent all she had working with them.
All right, they had taken her money, but couldn't do anything for her. And so it looks like just a hopeless case. There's nothing to be done. Was there anything about her ailment that may account for why she approached him in the way she did? Did you look this up in the Old Testament reference I gave?
They were supposed to go around. They had to isolate them.
Okay, it was Leviticus 15. It's one of the forms of what? Uncleanness is the word I'm looking for. She'd be unclean, and touch anybody would make them unclean. So they isolated them. And so I think that accounts for her backwardness and the way that she approaches him here. She touches him, or the hem of his garment, and straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she perceived something, and he perceived something. What did she perceive?
She knew she was cured.
All right, she felt in her body that she was healed, and he perceived what? All right, but of course, like the disciples were saying, people are brushing all over him there. He perceived that this was a different kind of a touch, didn't he? Power had gone forth, as verse 30 says. Apparently, this is a case where the will of Jesus is not involved. It's not an act of his will. He decides to do it, but God rewards the faith of this woman by healing her through Jesus, but without him especially taking notice of her until it is done. Can you think of any reason why he would expose it in the way he did? Call attention to her? Could there have been something about that would have been misleading? Could have fed, say, superstition?
Yeah, you just get a hold of his cloak, just touch
Just a
garment.
magic wand kind of a thing?
Like the shroud that they pass around here.
We have folks today who advocate that kind of thing. Put your hand on the radio or send me your handkerchief and I'll bless you and heal you, this kind of thing.
The healing by relics, all those kind of things, just superstition, actually. So, Jesus exposes it, and there may be two or three things that will be done by that. One is that he connects what has happened with himself. And then he rules out possible superstitious notions that could arise from this sort of thing. It was the faith of the woman, not just some magical thing about his garment. And then he gives her a promise. He speaks to her publicly here, verse 34. Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace. Go into peace. Literally, the Greek says, the preposition is into. Go into peace. So, for 12 years she had been living in misery, and now she goes into peace. That's what is ahead of her now. And be whole of thy plague. So, there is the assurance. Now, she has been healed, but there is the assurance here that she is done with this, and that she is going forth into a life of peace. All right, then, the thing that makes the third example a hard case is what?
She died.
So we're dealing with a resurrection from the dead. Verse 35. While he yet spake, they come from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the teacher any further? Jesus, not heeding the word spoken, saith unto the ruler of the synagogue, Fear not, only believe. And he suffered no man to follow with him, save Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they come to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and he beholdeth the tumult, and many weeping and wailing greatly. Matthew says there were flute players there. Matthew's account of this. They really put on a show at funerals. There's a passage in the Old Testament that shows that people would be trained in mourning. Jeremiah the 9th chapter, if I recall correctly, toward the end of the chapter, mentions those who are skilled in mourning. There would be people that would come as professionals. There would be these loud expressions of mourning, and the mournful music that would be played in real display. And this is the kind of situation that's going on when Jesus comes. Verse 39, when he was entered in, he saith unto them, Why make ye a tumult and weep? The child is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But he, having put them all forth, taketh the father of the child and her mother and them that were with him, and goeth in where the child was. And taking the child by the hand, he saith unto her, Talitha cumi. It's Aramaic. Mark tells us exactly what the words the Lord spoke were. You think about that. It may make you listen a little closer to get the exact words he said, which is being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. I misread that, which is being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway the damsel rose up and walked, for she was 12 years old, and not just a baby. And they were amazed straightway with a great amazement, and he charged them much that no man should know this, and he commanded that something should be given her to eat. All right, one of the questions calls attention to the trial that this man's faith has to go through before he finally gets the reward. In the first place, he comes to Jesus just out of desperation. A 12-year-old daughter, the only daughter, the apple of his eye, as I said, and on the point of death. So here's a desperate father. And he comes, and Jesus agrees to go with him, but can't make any progress. The crowds are all thronging about. Can you imagine the state of that man's mind? And then, this incident with this woman holds them up even further. And last of all, servants meet him on the way and said, there's no need. Bring him now. She's dead. Does Jesus show some insight into the state of that man's mind? Sympathy with him?
He says, be not afraid.
Okay.
And
Only believe.
Fear not. Only believe. Don't worry. You just keep on holding on. Just keep believing. In effect, he tells him. I think it is important to notice that a lot of times God tells us things just to help our feelings. When Paul gives us that passage in 1 Thessalonians 4 about the state of the dead, and that they're not going to lose out on anything because they died before the second coming took place. I mean, the truth of that is that telling us about it or not telling us about it is not going to change the facts of it at all. But God is concerned about our state of mind, our emotional state of mind. This is the kind of God we serve. And there's so much in the Scriptures in which he shows himself to be that kind of God. And so in this case, Jesus gives these words of reassurance to this man. Now, he permits only Peter and James and John, the brother of James, to go with him. this is not going to be a sideshow. And these mockers are certainly not going to be permitted to see this. They just disqualify themselves. But there will be witnesses who can testify about it. So he takes Peter and James and John. They come to the house, and he says, "Why make ye a tumult and weep? The child is not dead, but sleepeth." Some passages speak of death as asleep, but that's not what this is talking about. Sleeping is in contrast with death. But was she dead or not?
That was the message, and they already seemed like they started the...
Verse 40 says, they laughed him to scorn. Now in Luke's account, it says they laughed at him knowing that she was dead. His statement about this gives them the opportunity to come out with that. Now it's not a matter that Jesus has come and examined her and saw that she's not really dead. This is what the skeptics want to say about this. That's not what has happened. He's not the one that's been there. The crowd that's been there and known about the situation, they laugh him to scorn when he says that she's not dead but sleeping. He says that in view of the fact he's going to raise her from the dead. You can hardly call it anything but a sleep since it's going to be so short. He's going to raise her. But they laugh him to scorn. And so, I'll tell you one thing, it's going to be hard for them to back up on their position, isn't it? They're not going to be able to take the position, well, she never was really dead in the first place. And maybe a part of his reason for saying what he does and approaching it the way he does is to give them the opportunity to come out and be on record in that way. And so he gives the order, damsel, arise, and straightway she rose up and walked. They were amazed, straightway with a great amazement. And so he shows his power. Let's add these things up again. He has shown his power over what? Over demons, the satanic world, over sickness, disease, nature, and the stilling of the storm. Is there any other we've had before now? I think that sums those up. And now, over death itself. This is the way Jesus, when he came as a man, showing himself, he showed himself in this way by these mighty works. And he charged them that no man should know this. What do you make of that? How are they going to keep anybody from knowing it? That's not really the point, is it? There is this restraint that Jesus manifests, the restraint on the publication of these things and the declaration of himself. I think this is somewhat like the case with the leper, where it was not to be known. The crowds were going to be pressing in, and the miracles, if that is not accompanied by teaching, then people are going to misunderstand. You remember in John 6 when he feeds the multitudes and they are ready to take him to Jerusalem and declare him to be Messiah. Just make him king right then. Take him by force and make him king. So they misunderstand this. He does not want to be known as a miracle worker. He does not want this untaught enthusiasm of the people to be fed. And so there's a restraint on the publication of these miracles. The word will get around about what has happened here. It can't be otherwise. The girl will be seen and so on. But he'll be away. Give him an opportunity, and at least he's restrained it and give him an opportunity to be away, I think may be the point here. And then one note at the end, an unusual thoughtfulness. This tremendous miracle has taken place here, but instead of being just caught up in that excitement, what does Jesus think to do? commanded that something should be given her to eat. He knows she'll be hungry. Who would have thought of that? He did. Okay.